What would it be like to walk from El Salvador to the United States at 9 years old? Javier Zamora tells you everything you need to know in Solito. Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop shop for all things audiobook. When Javier Zamora was just 9 years old, his grandfather took him on a bus to Guatemala. Shortly after, they parted ways, and from that point, Javier journeyed to the United States where his parents were waiting with no family, in the company of strangers. He had no contact with anyone he knew. And I can't even imagine what that was like, having read his account. This isn't a book I would have ordinarily picked up on my own. I do read memoirs. However, I thought this book was going to be a little bit of a downer. So when it got suggested for a book club pick, I didn't say no because I do make an effort to read all kinds of books. I'm going to just come out and say it. I hated the narration in this book. It's narrated by Javier Zamora, and I have always said and will always say that I think when it is someone's individual story, they should be the one to tell it. I shouldn't hear Javier Zamora's story from someone else's voice. So I agree that it should have been him. However, he spoke incredibly slowly, really extended pauses. I mean, it got really painful. Right away, I turned the speed up to 1.25, and that helped a little bit. By the end of this book, and I have to tell you I enjoyed it, I had it going at double speed, and it pretty much felt normal. So I think he needed a little direction because he really was morbid and slow and depressing as a narrator. Even though he was good at narrating, there were just too many odd breaks in his speech. In spite of his poor narration, Javier Zamora has an incredible story, and he's a really good writer. He's written a lot of poetry in his life, and this is his first novel, but as he began unpacking his experience through many of his poems, he realized maybe telling the whole story outright would be a great idea. I really appreciated the way that he used all five senses in his writing. He often described the sights and the sounds in an area, but he also described the smells and the tastes, the food that he was eating, the things that he was smelling in a room or in a town. And I could hear the roots of his poetry background really clearly in his writing, and it made for incredible descriptions. A lot of this trip was waiting. A lot of the trip was waiting for safe moments to proceed and go forward. Now, can you imagine a 9-year-old sitting trapped in a small room with just one TV and people he didn't know for weeks on end? I mean, this was really a harrowing journey, and he was a healthy young boy who physically was probably capable of a lot more than I would say I am. However, he got through this entire journey. He really didn't complain. I mean, granted, it's told from his perspective, but I can't even imagine the emotional and physical exhaustion that this young boy would have gone through. Political opinions aside, this is a really fascinating story. Now, it may not be a story for you. There are many stories like this, and I'm sure there are others you can find if you're interested. And if you're not interested, that's cool. Just don't read it. I didn't think I'd be interested, but I'm really glad I went ahead with it anyway. The situations he got into, the terrain, the risk, the fear, he describes all of it and makes it so visceral, and I really got a lot out of his writing. Again, even though I hated his narration. I think one of the things that makes this book so powerful is that it's told from a child's perspective. Even though he's writing his own story as a result, he does an incredible job of putting himself back in a child's mindset. And it's impressive how he describes things because the things that would matter to a child are the things that he talks about in this story. It's not littered, if you will, with an adult perspective, and adults would have been worrying about extremely different things than a 9-year-old. I cheated while I was reading and I Googled Javier Zamora, so I know where he ended up. I knew while I was reading the book. The end of this book still had me on the edge of my seat. I was so engrossed in the story and so desperate to find out how he gets to his goal. And it really was written in a way that made me feel like anything could happen at any moment. And that wasn't to fabricate attention. That was more because that's really how it happened for this boy. So listen, if this is something that's interesting to you, I say go for it. Like I said, I probably wouldn't have picked it up on my own, but in the end, I'm very glad that I did. And remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion. But thanks for listening to mine. Don't forget to like and subscribe.